Right, hi, everyone. Oh my god. Hi, everyone. Hi, Blue. This is for you. This is chapter 11, Searching for Dragons, in which Minimbar and Submarine are very busy. So busy they can't even update us on what's going on. Okay, no. Something was wrong. Minimbar could feel it, even though before he was fully awake. The magic of the enchanted forest floated all around him, but it seemed tenuous and tottery, almost disconnected. He thought he had better get up and fix it. He opened his eyes. Simrine's concerned face hovered a foot above him. Her mane had come loose from their tight crown, and there was a worry line between her eyebrows. He didn't want her to be worried. He tried to say so, but all he managed was a coughing fit. Serene bit her lip, and the troubled expression intensified. Don't try to talk yet, she said unhappily. Don't try to do anything yet. Your sword is safe, and I'm all right, and everything else can wait a few minutes. Just lie there and breathe slowly. It occurred to Menenbar that Serene was anxious about him. That was nice, in a way, but he still didn't want her to be unhappy. In fact, it was suddenly very important to him that Serene should not be worried or unhappy in the slightest. That's called a crush. Welcome to this world. It's a wonderful world. Enjoy it. It's full of pain and misery. He, sometimes. Most of the time. He closed his eyes. What am I doing? He closed his eyes to consider how best to convey this and fell asleep at once. Oh, good job. You had one job. When he woke, the sky was the pale blue of late afternoon. Rubbing his eyes, he sat up carefully, remembering what had happened earlier when he tried to talk. Simrine was at his side at once. Are you sure you should do that? She said. It hasn't hurt so far, Mendenbar replied. What happened? Simrine studied him for a moment and then relaxed visibly. I'm not sure, she said. One minute we were going somewhere, and the next minute we weren't. When I picked myself up, you were lying there looking 3/4 dead and as white as cracked ice. And you've been that way for over 4 hours. If that's your transportation spell, I think I would have preferred the carpet. At least it got us to the forest. Not exactly. Oh no. Mendenbar blinked at her, then looked around. The carpet on which he and Simrine were sitting lay in the center of a 20-foot circle of thin green fuzz. 7 saplings, pencil thick, and none more than waist high, poked randomly upward through the fuzz. Beyond the circle, patches of short, brownish-green grass alternated with mottled gray rock that rose quickly into cliffs and ridges and then sudden sharp heights of mountains that shadowed them all. None of it looked familiar, though it still felt vaguely like the enchanted forest to him. Well, at least we went somewhere, Mendenbar said after a moment. Yes, but where? Those are the mountains of morning, but this bit, Simmering waved at the green fuzz in the sapling, looks as if it belongs in the enchanted forest. So what's it doing here? It feels like the enchanted forest, too, Mendenbar said. He shifted and his hand touched cool metal. Even without thinking, he knew it was his sword. He picked it up and looked at it thoughtfully. Simrine, is this still leaking magic the way you said it was earlier? No, Simrine said. I can tell it's a magic sword, an odd one at that, but only if I study it. It's not so obvious anymore. Mendenbar pushed himself to his feet. It took more effort than he had expected, and by the time he finished, the worry line had reappeared between Simrine's eyebrows. I'm all right, he told her. Mostly. He waited for a moment for his head to stop spinning, and then walked cautiously to the edge of the circle of fuzz. He stepped over the boundary onto a patch of grass. The comforting sense of being surrounded by magic vanished, and although he had more than half expected it, he staggered slightly. Simrine was beside him almost at once. What is it? It was just the change. Can you feel my sword now? Yes, Simrine said, but it's nowhere near as bad as it was this morning. I was afraid you were going to say that. Mendenbar looked at the circular area of green and sighed. I hate to do this, but you're right. It doesn't belong here. He started forward. Simrine grabbed his arm. Wait a minute. What are you talking about? This, Mendenbar pointed at the saplings with his sword. In a way, it really is part of the enchanted forest. That's why it feels like home to me, and that's why the sword doesn't feel obvious when it's inside. That makes sense, Simrine said. She still had hold of his arm. But how did it get here? I don't think it did exactly, Mendenbar said. I think the sword made it for us when we couldn't get through the real forest. Or to the real forest. That's why it's so new looking. Your sword? Simrine paused, thinking. Yes, he told me it was linked to the enchanted forest. She looked at the green area. I didn't realize it could do things on its own without someone directing it. Normally it doesn't, Mendenbar said, unless it's picking the next king of the enchanted forest. Picking the next... Simrine's voice trailed off and she shook her head. I think you'd better tell me about that sword. All about it, not just dribbles of information when something comes up. I have a feeling we're going to need to know. I don't know that much, Mendenbar said, and I'd have to take care of these things first. He waved at the saplings. What are you going to do? Well, the sword did it. I had to be able to undo it, Mendenbar said. I don't want to erase this patch, but I can't think of anything else to do with it. It wouldn't be a good idea to leave a bit of my kingdom disconnected like this. No, I can see that, Simrine said, releasing his arm at last. Just watch what you're doing. Oh, she was holding his arm the entire time. Who's shipping this? Just tell him. Just watch what you're doing with that spell. It's going to be dark soon. I don't want to spend another 4 hours waiting for you to wake up. I don't like the idea myself, Mendenbar said. Don't worry, I'll be careful. You'd better be. Mendenbar smiled, raised his sword, and walked back into the tiny forest. He paced around the edge, getting the feel of the magic that was spread spider thin across the circle. Then he stopped. With his left hand, he lowered his sword so that the tip rested on the green fuzz that might one day have grown into moss. With his right, he reached out and touched the web, gathering in the threads. When his hand was full, he began to feed the threads into the sword. It was touchy work, for the invisible strands were thin and fragile, and he knew that if he missed even one, he would have to begin all over again. The task took a lot of concentration, for the sword accepted the threads with great reluctance. He was not at all sure he would have the strength to do it twice, so he worked with painstaking slowness. When he was halfway through, the saplings began to shrink. Slowly at first, and then faster and faster, the little trees grew shorter and more slender until they disappeared into the green fuzz. For a moment nothing seemed to happen. Then the circle of green began to shrink. Like a drop of water being sucked up by a napkin, the green edge drew back toward the sword, leaving bare rock behind it. In a moment the retreating border was out of sight beneath the carpet. Mendenbar, oh my god. Mendenbar continued feeding magic into the sword. There were only a few threads left, and he slowed down even more. A puddle the size of a wagon wheel was all that was left of the original circle. It shrank to the size of a dinner plate, then a pancake, then a penny. Then it was gone. For a heartbeat longer, Mendenbar held his position, checking to be certain he had not missed anything. Finally, he let go of the end of the spell and lifted the point of the sword from the ground. He'd felt much better than he had when he began. He looked up and smiled at Cimarine. That was extremely interesting, Cimarine said. She eyed the bare ground around the carpet. Is that all of it? I think so. Why? Because if we don't want to spend the night here, we're going to have to leave quickly. It'll be getting dark soon. Cimarine paused, then added, You'd better put that sword away. It's dripping magic again. Oh, God, how are they going to deal with this? Sorry, Mendenbar said. Why don't we, with a rattle of small stones and a vicious hiss, a long gray-black snake shot out of a crevice at the top of the nearest cliff and dropped towards Cimarine. Mendenbar jerked his sword up and set a crackling bolt of power to meet the serpent. The hiss became a choking gurgle as the snake flared into a bright line of fire and disintegrated. That happened fast. Flakes of ash drifted the last few feet to fall around Mendenbar and Cimarine. 3 more snakes launched themselves from parts of the cliff, and another slithered from behind a boulder. From the corner of his eye, Mendenbar saw Cimarine yank her sword out of its sheath. He hoped briefly and intensely that she was as good at fighting, and then he had no time for anything or attention. And then he had no time or attention for anything except the snakes. A second blast of magic disposed of 2 of the 3 in the air, and a single sword stroke chopped the third in half. By then, 4 new snakes were in the air, and Mendenbar could hear more hissing on all sides. He sent another spell skyward, and another, then swung at 2 snakes that had leaped from a crack barely shoulder-high above the ground. After that, he lost track of how many snakes he struck or stabbed or chopped, or how many he burned or blasted. He had no time for anything but fighting. He swung his sword until his arms were tired, and his head hurt from concentration and spell-casting. And then, suddenly, there were no more snakes. How did this happen? Where did they... The ground was dusted with ashes and littered with pieces of snakes, and the air smelled of charred meat. Slowly, Mendenbar lowered his sword. A few paces away, Cimarine was straightening up from a fighter's crouch with the same wary hesitation. Her sword was covered with dark blood, and there were quite a lot of dead snakes around her. Oh, wonderful, Mendenbar said with heartfelt sincerity. I was hoping you were good with a sword. You aren't bad with one yourself, Cimarine replied a little breathlessly. It's a magic sword, Mendenbar reminded her, but he felt absurdly pleased nonetheless. Cimarine grinned. So is mine. I know a little about fencing, but not enough to do me any good against most of the things in the mountains of morning. That's why Kazul lets me carry this. She lifted her sword, and a drop of snake blood fell from the tip. She frowned and began fishing in her pockets with her free hand. It's supposed to make the bearer impossible to defeat. Sounds good to me, Mendenbar said, looking at the bits of snake near Cimarine's feet. What's the catch? Getting killed isn't the same as being defeated, Cimarine said. She pulled a handkerchief from the pocket, smiled, and began cleaning the sword with it. Not always, anyway. And it doesn't keep you from getting hurt either, so I still have to be careful. Do you want to use this? She held out the stained handkerchief. Thank you, Mendenbar said, taking the square of cloth. He wiped his sword carefully, resheathed it, and hesitated. Do you want it back? I'm afraid it's ruined. That's all right, Cimarine said. I always carry 1 or 2 extras. She retrieved the handkerchief, grimaced, and tied it into a tight bundle, which she stowed in her belt pouch. There. Now, let's get out of here. Why such a hurry? We still have to rescue Kazul, and besides, do you want to fight more rock snakes? No, I don't. That's what we'll be doing if we stay. We've cleaned out this part pretty well, but there's sure to be several other colonies around. She pointed at a dark ridge a couple 100 feet further on. There, for instance, or there. She gestured in the opposite direction at a wrinkled cliff. I don't see how we can get past them on foot, Minibar said, frowning. Well, we can't stay here. They'll slither over as soon as the last of the light goes. We'll have to take the carpet. I wouldn't recommend it, said a new voice. Who's this? Who is this? Together, Mendenbar and Serene turned. The voice belonged to a dark-haired man who stood calmly next to the magic carpet, watching them with interest. He was several inches shorter than Mendenbar, with bright blue eyes and a neatly trimmed beard and mustache. He wore tall black boots, dark gray leggings, a loose-sleeve, high-necked shirt in pale gray, and an open knee-length black vest, with pockets of all shapes and sizes. Under the vest, his wide black belt was hung with strangely shaped pouches and sheaths. The air around him crackled with magic. "Who are you?" Simrine asked. "And why don't you want us to use the carpet?" "My name is Telemaine," said the man, bowing, "and I have considerable familiarity with the basic mechanics of carpets. Magic ones, that is. And this carpet," he gestured left-handed, and 3 silver rings glinted in the fading light, "is plainly defective." "Defective?" Mendenbar said suspiciously. Telemaine didn't look like a wizard, but that didn't necessarily mean much. Wizards could wear disguises as well as anyone else. "Oh, it will probably operate after a fashion," Telemaine said, "but not well and not for long. I'm surprised you got this far on it." "We didn't, exactly," Mendenbar said, "and we have had some trouble with it. What do you suggest?" The sound of a pebble bouncing down a series of rocks echoed along the narrow canyon. "I suggest we talk somewhere else," Telemaine said, glancing toward the sound. "This isn't a safe place, even with my defensive enchantments fully erected." "And how do you suggest we get there?" Simrine asked. "Like this." Telemaine raised a hand and made a circle in the air with his forefinger. As he did, he muttered something, then clapped both hands together. The canyon flowed and melted into a sloping meadow halfway up a mountainside. "How?" "Much better," Telemaine said. "No rock snakes, trolls, ogres, or other dangerous wildlife. I guarantee it." "Is there a catch?" Mendenbar was inclined to believe him. Trolls and ogres liked places where they could jump out from behind things or pop out from under rocks. An open meadow didn't have much cover. Besides, Telemaine was no longer surrounded by the hum of magic, which meant he had dropped his guarding spell. "Now," Telemaine went on, "how did the 2 of you get into a ravine full of rock snakes with a defective magic carpet? Having rescued you, I think I am entitled to some explanation." "We were on our way to the enchanted forest," Simrine said carefully, pushing wisps of loose hair out of her face. Mendenbar noted with approval that she said nothing about the reasons for wanting to go there. "How did you happen to come by at such a convenient moment?" "I was looking for some people I thought might be in this area," Telemaine said. "By the way, what are your names?" "This is Simrine, and I'm Mendenbar." Mendenbar said. "Who are you looking for?" "You, I think," Telemaine said, smiling. "That is, if you're the same Simrine and Mendenbar who visited Herman the Dwarf earlier today." "That was us," Simrine said cautiously. "Good, then I can settle this quickly and get back to work. How did you— Excuse me," Mendenbar interrupted, "but how do you know Herman? And how did you find us?" "I know Herman because he bought his house from me," Telemaine said. "Oh! Oh!" He was beginning to sound irritated. "I also maintain certain defensive enchantments which are especially designed to prevent incursions by noxious creatures around the house and neighboring areas for him. When someone demolished the scrying spell I'd established on the attic window, I felt obliged to investigate." Herman was in the middle of an explanation about visitors and dragons when I sensed an extremely interesting sorcerer's flare to the northwest. "I knew that dratted sword was going to get us in trouble," Simmery muttered. Before I had time to locate it precisely, there was another burst of magic, which I recognized as a transportation spell, Telemaine continued. He frowned disapprovingly. "A rather confused one. It has taken me all afternoon to disentangle the traces and discover your whereabouts. Does that satisfy you?" "I think so," Mendenbar said. "I'm sorry if we seem overly mistrustful, but we've already had some trouble with one wizard, and we've reason to expect more, so, you see—" "I am not a wizard," Telemaine said emphatically. "I'm a magician. Can't you tell?" "No," Simrine said. "What's the difference?" "A magician knows many types of magic," Telemaine said. "Wizards only know one, and they're very secretive about it. I've been researching them for years, trying to duplicate their methodology, but I still haven't managed a workable simulation." "What?" said Simrine, looking puzzled. "He's been trying to figure out how the wizards work their spells," Mendenbar explained, "but he hasn't done it yet." "Why do you want to know that?" Simrine asked Telemaine with renewed suspicion. "Because that's what I do," Telemaine said. "I just told you that, and if you answer a few questions for me, I can get back to doing it. How did you shatter that window?" That is a good place to stop, and I will keep reading in another video.